Okay, get this. The Roman Empire, it was founded by a kid who was literally raised by a wolf. So, how did that turn into one of the most powerful empires ever?
Yeah, you heard me. The whole thing kicks off with a couple of abandoned twin babies and a wolf. It's just wild, right? But how in the world do you go from that, from a crazy myth, to a global superpower? Like, what was their secret sauce? Well, the clues are probably not what you're expecting. We're talking about things like super concrete, totally epic soldiers, and graffiti? Yep. Let's dive in. All right, first things first, let's get into that totally unbelievable origin story. So, the legend goes that Rome got its name from a guy named Romulus. He and his twin, Remus, were just left out to die, but then they were found and raised by a she-wolf. I know, it sounds like something out of a movie, but this is the myth that started it all.
Okay, a cool legend is, well, it's cool, but it's not going to build you an empire. So what was the real secret to their power?
Clue number one is a big one. These guys were absolute super builders, like engineering geniuses. They didn't just build stuff, they built it to last, like pretty much forever.
Just look at this. They built these things called aqueducts. The best way to think about them is like giant water highways, piping fresh water directly into their massive cities.
And let me tell you, this was a total game changer. I mean, with aqueducts, they could build these huge cities and just keep them growing and growing.
And their whole engineering toolkit was just incredible. They had this special kind of concrete that made their buildings super strong. They paved thousands of miles of roads so their armies could move super fast. And get this, they even had public baths so everyone could, stay clean and hang out.
But look, awesome buildings are great, but they don't exactly conquer other countries, right? For that, you need clue number two, a completely unstoppable army.
So their military was like a perfectly tuned machine, and it basically had three key parts. First, you've got the legion. These were highly trained, super disciplined units. Then, the gladius, a short sword that was just perfect for up-close and personal fighting. And finally, the scutum, this giant curved shield that basically turned a group of soldiers into a walking fortress.
All right, so we've got giant buildings and a crazy powerful army. Check. But what was it actually like for the average person living there day to day?
I mean, from the outside, their cities looked absolutely perfect. You've got these grand, impressive temples, huge public squares. It all just screams order and power.
But what was life really like for just, a regular person? How could we ever possibly know what was actually on their minds?
The answer is kind of funny, actually. We check their social media.
Wait, what?
Yeah, well, kinda. The ancient version of it, anyway. Seriously, in places like Pompeii, which got buried by a volcano, archaeologists found something incredible. Graffiti, just everywhere. And because it was preserved under all that ash, it gives us this totally raw, unfiltered peek into what their lives were actually like. And oh man, they wrote about everything. We're talking jokes, advertisements for the best bread in town, a little political gossip. It's all there. And it really shows you that, deep down, they weren't all that different from us.
Okay, so let's recap. They had mind-blowing technology, a world-class army, and a super vibrant society. So how could an empire this awesome just fall apart? What went so wrong?
With everything they had going for them, what was the one fatal flaw? What was the thing that brought the whole house of cards crashing down? The answer is surprisingly simple. It really boils down to bad leadership. After their first truly great emperor, a guy named Augustus, the leaders who came after him, well, let's just say they weren't exactly A-list material. Just think about it. You had Augustus, who was wise, he was strong, and he kicked off a 200-year stretch of peace they called the Pax Romana. Then, you get the later emperors. A lot of them were unstable, they made one foolish decision after another, and they just hollowed out the empire from the inside.
And all that weakness on the inside, it made them a perfect target for outside forces. Barbarian tribes started putting on the pressure. The empire literally split into two separate halves. And finally, in 476 CE, that was it. The last emperor in the West was officially kicked off the throne. Game over.
Whoa, okay, that was a lot to take in. So let's do a super quick recap.
It all started with that wild wolf boy legend. Their power came from genius engineering.
They had unstoppable super soldiers.
And it was all undone by bad bosses.
Hey, if you learned something cool, do me a favor and smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives like this. And before you click away, drop a comment below. I want to know, what's the most surprising thing you learned about the Romans today?